Hello, hello, hello. Um, how are things going from everyone? Carmine, you're still here, yes?
Yes, sir.
All right. Um, the we were chatting beforehand. The I so let's talk about Jamie for a minute. So last week I had a really good question about Jamie, um, and a plot hole, a big plot hole. But little bits of pieces. People added little bits and pieces later on more to this. But I do have to like just bring up again like this Jamie situation, which I'd never noticed before. Um, and yet it's like a pretty major goof that George R. R. Martin did. And I don't know if it's a goof like he tried. I do think he tried to transition it, but it's it's a hole. And um I don't, the way he transitions it in Storm to try to deal with it makes it seem like he's trying to trick the reader. But now with the Ice and Fire books, we like go back to all of the lines and try to look for consistency. So it doesn't really like work or function that way. Um, so what I'm talking about, if you guys didn't weren't on last week's stream, the there is when the big epic Jamie Catelyn conversation that happens at the end of A Clash of Kings. Um, Jamie says this crazy line. Um, he says, Catelyn's like, you would have believed me. You slew him to avenge Brandon Stark. I made no such claim. The Starks were nothing to me, I will say. I think it passing odd that I am loved by one for a kindness I never did, and reviled by so many for my finest act. And then he goes on to talk about that vile act. At Robert's coronation, I was made to kneel at the royal fleet beside Grand Admiral Pycelle, blah, 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 blah. I think this was originally brought up because somebody's like, why doesn't Jamie think about the Taisha situation more? And he thinks about it essentially three times, if we count this. But this line, I think it odd that I am loved by one for a kindness I never did. Um, it makes no sense. It makes no sense. Now, now it's clear like it doesn't seem like it's about Taisha right here, but I'll show you with additional stuff. We can very clearly see that it's supposed to be about Taisha. So in Storm, if we filter by Jamie, because you're like, oh, who is the person that loves him for a kindness he never did? Well, we find out in Storm that, and the wench had the right of it. He could not die. Cersei was waiting for him. She would have need of him. And Tyrion, his little brother, who loved him for a lie. So Jamie admits in his life that he only has two people that love him, Cersei and Tyrion. And we have here loved him for a lie. And in the previous situation, loved him for a kindness I never did. Well, that's pretty close to a lie. So we know that this passage in Catelyn 7 is about Tyrion. This is situation number 2 where he thinks about Taisha. So I think it passing odd that Tyrion loves me for a kindness I never did. It just, I mean, Tyrion should love him because he's his brother, and he's nice to him his whole life, right? He shouldn't love him for this kindness that he never did. And what is the kindness that he never did? What kindness did Jamie ever do? He didn't do any kindness. Like the kindness in this story is hiring a sex worker, and then hiring a sex worker and having and tricking Tyrion so much that he falls in love with her, and then has to gang rape her. Like that's hardly a kindness, that anyone would love you for. And then the final point in which he says with the final time he thinks about Taisha is here in Jamie 7. There's a switch, and you can kind of see George R. R. Martin trying to trick us here. He says, Tyrion, Jamie would not want to believe it. Kinslaying was worse than kingslaying in the eyes of gods and men. He knew the boy was mine. I loved Tyrion. I was good to him, but for that one time. But the imp did not know the truth of it. So this time we've switched around the love. Now it's Jamie loving Tyrion. And now it's like the imp didn't know the truth of it. So we're still talking about a lie. So we're clearly talking about Taisha the entire time. But this passage here, and this is such a weird, clunky sentence. I think it passing odd that I'm loved by one for a kindness I never did, and reviled by so many for my finest act. If it's supposed to be Taisha, it makes no sense. But Carmine, what were you thinking about this? Any possible outs on this, or to just George just like completely screw up?
It only makes sense. By the way, can you understand me? Is my mic
Yes,
okay?
yes.
It only makes sense if Jamie thinks that Tyrion getting laid is like a yeah, and Tyrion is super cool with that. It only makes sense in that regard. It doesn't make sense because to us as the audience because we know how Tyrion feels about the situation, but Jamie doesn't. So does Jamie think that Tyrion is completely cool with being tricked,
But then he
and
wouldn't
as
think
long
it
as he got
odd,
laid?
right? Like say in Jamie's head, this is the whole thing, because this is Jamie's head. Say Jamie is like, yeah, my brother loves me because I once hired him a hooker to have him lose his virginity. And say that's Jamie's screwed up notion. But Jamie thinks it's odd. So he would have to come up with this like weird twisted idea and then put it on his brother and then think it's odd that his brother thinks that. Isn't it so odd that Tyrion likes me for that? That's so odd. But you just made that like up in your head to put on him, right?
Hmm.
It's not Jaime's fault Tyrion married the prostitute. That has nothing to do with Tyrion thinking Jaime got him one. But Tyrion doesn't love Jaime because of that. He loves Jaime anyway. He loves Jaime despite that. Or he loves Jaime but he doesn't know about the truth of a lie. If he knew the truth of a lie, he might not love Jaime. Like that's the real situation, right? Is he loves Jaime despite a lie that he doesn't know the truth of. Right? But that's clunky to say, right? Like he doesn't love him for a lie. Because remember, the second half of the sentence is it's for an action, right? The action, he's hated by all these people for the action of killing Aerys. He's loved by Tyrion for a lie that he didn't actually do. For an act of kindness that he never did. But clearly Tyrion doesn't love him for that reason. Like it's just it's so odd that I had to bring it up again on stream because it was just like going through those three moments.
Clearly, Tyrion doesn't love him for that reason, but does Jaime know that? What does Jaime know? What does he think?
Right, but then why does he think it odd? Like, say Jaime's like, you know what? My brother, he's a little person. He never got laid, and you know what I did to really make him love me is actually I didn't do this. I lied about doing this because my daddy like forced me to. Like what? Like here's the thing from Jaime's perspective, okay? Jaime knows from the beginning that this girl actually liked him. Right? They rescued this girl. She fancied Tyrion. She slept with him. They went and got married, okay? So in Jaime's mind, he's like, he really loves me for the kindness of claiming that she is a sex worker and then it all ended up in a brutal brutal gang raping. Like it's so silly. Like what? Like how is in what environment, like what scenario is Tyrion loving you for an action that you did that day? Because if it's for participating in rescuing the girl, Jaime actually did that, so that's not a lie. So it can't be that. The kindness is like the hiring that didn't happen, but Tyrion wouldn't. Like it's just your head twists around so much even thinking about it. It's such a very very silly, very very silly thing. Um, Maybe the kindness was the lie. Tywin was going to take her away one way or the other. So instead of the loneliness of separation, he got to experience a kind of vengeance. But then that is an actual kindness. The problem is that it's a fake kindness. It's a kindness Jaime didn't do. Right? So, was my stomach there? Did you hear that, Carmine?
No.
But like Jaime, for example, doing a calculation on like what would actually make Tyrion happy in the end would be a real kindness. But we're talking about a fake kindness. It's anyway, George, I'm saying that George really fucked this up. And then he realized he fucked it up. And so when you go to incident 2, he talks about Tyrion loving him for a lie. And then in incident 3, he twists it around and makes it Jaime loving Tyrion and the lie something else, and hoping that the reader forgot what the whole thing was about in Clash and is not going to return, because when he's writing Storm, he's not thinking that everybody's like overanalyzing his books like we do. But yeah. Anyway, Carmine, what else is going on with you?
I was gonna bounce, but before I do, you want me to bring up the thing, or you want me to bring up later?
Oh, I mean, you could bring it up. It's um Carmine and I did this this is Carmine and I did this podcast last week in which we talked about
George's blog
George's
post.
latest blog post and how
Mm-hmm.
depressed he was, and how he was claiming like 2023 was like the worst year. And I was like listing a bunch of things on like why 2023 wasn't the worst year, and that he's just in a negative headspace because on a personal basis he's going through a lot of struggling stuff, and therefore he's projecting it. But like objectively speaking, like 2023 was not a bad year. And like one of the things I brought up is that by all measures, the U.S. economy is booming right now in 2023, and quite surprising for this rather innocuous statement that you can find in any newspaper, like, or you can Google as just sort of a fact. Quite surprisingly, like a whole bunch of people came out of the woodwork and started like started pushing back on the statement that I made that the U.S. economy is booming. And it did bother me because it was like it's such a like objectively true thing, and yet when you see like it just kind of bothers you because it's just like people come back and they're like, okay, step one, you can just deny the truth of it, just be like, oh no, you're wrong, the economy's horrible, and or do an ad hominem attack like Preston's out of touch. He's crazy. And I somewhat understand that because like right-wing media and like, liberal doom media has been claiming that there's going to be this recession that never happened. But the thing is, you can also just like Google it too and find that like by all indicators, the US economy is booming. So strategy 1 is like just deny it and like attack Preston and say like he's out of touch. And then so put that aside. Strategy 2 on claiming on the strat on it is try to find some metric that claims that the economy is doing poorly. For instance, maybe GDP is booming, so I'm going to start talking about inflation. I'm going to bring up something else. Well, it turns out inflation's low. Okay, well, but that's not keeping up with people's wages. Actually, wage rate is really high. Well, what about rent? So actually, rent's dropped. Like, it's funny because like it's really really difficult right now to look at 2023 and claim that was a bad year economically. Like all indicators across the board, um, claim that it's like the economy's booming. All right, that's just like a fact. Okay, it's really difficult to find an indicator that says that things aren't doing well. Unemployment way low, wages skyrocketing, inflation low, GDP booming, stock market up, like across the board. Now, so the other thing is like, again, Preston's out of touch, doesn't know what he's talking about. So then you say, okay, then you can take the third thing. You can be like, okay, Preston, you're being callous because you're not thinking about all of the poor people that well, actually before that, there's the anecdote person that's like, well, the economy's not doing well for me. It's like, well, yeah, we're talking about trends, like not versus anecdote. Like, it's like saying like you, Cheerios is a very popular cereal, and someone coming back and saying, "Well, I hate Cheerios." Well, that doesn't fucking change the fact that Cheerios is a really popular cereal. Like, you can't use anecdote to to like go against trend. Okay, the fact that the economy is not going well for you does not change the trend. Like, that's but people do this all the time in arguments, like anecdote. And then the fourth thing is to try to claim that, well, there's still millions of people that are doing poorly. Yeah. And there's millions of people that are doing really well. At any point, like, people are doing poorly and doing well. So like, if you're going to claim the economy is bad at all times, like, even though all of the data claims that the economy is good, and then to just claim the economy is bad because some people it's not doing well for, then there's no point in the data at all. And then you're just nihilist, and you're saying, well, data doesn't matter. But data does matter. Like, you can say like, well, you know what? Like, let's say you want to go for a hike and you want to know like if the weather is going to be good. Well, you can say like, oh, you know what? The weather's always sucky, but I want to take a hike. So what day is the best for weather? Like, data informs decisions. So like, the point of economic data is it informs policymakers and informs people on whether or not things are going the right direction, what policy decisions have been good and what policy decisions haven't been good, and what needs to be done in order to like, reconcile these sort of things. And so if you're in this world where you're just like, no, the economy's always fucking bad, then what's the fucking point of the data? Like it's just like nihilist shit. Like, no, it's very important to know that the economy is doing well, because then you can go back and look at the decisions and policies that led to that and try to emulate them, and not to, if the economy is tanking, then you've got to do things like government spending and tax cuts. If the economy is doing really well, then you can lower interest rates and all sorts of things, or if it's doing too well, increase interest rates or whatever. Like, like, this is the whole point. So all of these things bugged me, like, just especially as like a data person who like studied economics, for people to just be like, no, you like, Preston's out of touch. Like, no, like, you could fucking Google all this fucking shit. Anyway, Carmine, I don't know. What's your take on it? What's your take on it?
You're right. There are always going to be people doing bad. And that's just the fact of the matter. The only difference between people doing bad now versus them doing bad 50 years ago is now every dipshit and their mothers has a voice on the internet, and they can go into a YouTube comment section and talk to you about it. Or they can buy Twitter Blue and bitch about it, and then
Yeah.
somehow finagle Biden in there somewhere for causing it, even though, it's really the Republicans and they're doing. So someone was trying to explain to me like the tax brackets that are coming up, the new updated ones,
Mm.
were all Paul Ryan. And A lot of the economic problems a lot of people are facing really is Republicans just trying to, poison pill everything, and they brought up a lot of facts with it. So, but that's
Yeah.
your problem, homie. Is that you're not wrong, but you also
I
can't
was
tell
making
people
one of the simplest, most objectively true things that you can just fucking Google. That like the US economy is booming and doing really well.
I
And
understand that, but you're never going to win that argument, even though you're basically saying
it's
that two
just a
plus two is
fact. Like
four.
it's just a
No, I
fucking
understand. I
fact.
understand. I understand. But welcome to the internet, homie. You're saying that two plus two is four, and you're right. You could just Google it. You have a calculator, but some people are always going to be blind on purpose because that benefits Biden, and they don't want that.
Right. But and that's also the thing is that like when if economics, like people are hoping that economics informs voting decisions. And so if you claim that the economy is poor, then people are hoping that you will not vote for Biden. I mean, I'm the first to argue that the president probably doesn't have very much to do with the success of the economy, but I understand that why Fox News will sit there and just claim for years that there's like this recession coming and that things are horrible when it's not.
This is
The
also another problem you're going to encounter because someone here just said, because Google has the best source of truth, juxtaposed to what? The daily dipshit? I mean, there's always going to be a website that's
Oh
always
yeah.
going to regurgitate
I
shit
mean,
that you
look, you
want
can
to
go to the
hear
fucking Bureau of
specifically.
Labor Statistics, and it's just all the fucking stuff is
No,
there.
but the Bureau of Labor Civic, they're a part of the deep state. What
They're
else you
oh
got?
yeah, they're part of the deep state.
That's
That's
right.
right. You know,
My question is with everything happening in the world
these
right now, like
these teams of
Israel,
PhD economists, they're just
of course.
yeah, they're all
But
they're
the one
all
question I want
hacks.
to
They're
ask
all
you as a
hacks.
government hack, Fed, whatever people call you, the one question I want to ask you is with Israel attacking Palestine and Russia attacking Ukraine and the crisis at the border and the economy clearly not doing that well, my question to you is why would Hunter Biden's laptop do this to us? Like
I
what is the
know.
agenda with Hunter Biden's laptop?
Yeah, I mean, the economy is a very broad term, which is why I was talking about issue number two, where people can just switch data. But it's like it's such like this is one of the situations where right now all of the indicators, all of them across the board, are saying booming economy. Um, yeah, the so it's yeah, but what else? What else? Anyway, it annoyed me. It annoyed me. But there's this weird thing is like certain subjects, like everybody thinks they can jump in on. History is one of them. Economics is one of them. Religion is one of them. No one, like very few people, like jump in on chemistry and are like, "Well, let me tell you about chemistry," like to a chemist, like like. But it was really weird. One person was trying to tell me that like inflation doesn't um doesn't account for the rising costs that people face, and I'm like, that's by definition what inflation is. It's the costs. But whatevs. Anyway, but before we started, there were a bunch of super chats that I've got to get to,
All right,
that
I'm gonna
aren't
bounce. I
anonymous.
will maybe I'll jump in later, but I'll talk to you later,
Fine, leave me, Carmine. Go
homie.
fuck yourself.
Love you
You're dead
too.
to me. All right, man. Yeah. Whenever you want to come back, I know you got some laundry to do. Um. So the Watcher said, catching up on the replay crew this morning, still calling for the gluten-free pasta stream video thing. Will not stop asking for it, Preston. I know. I don't know why. Now it's just become like this random obsession about having me eat pasta on stream. I mean, it was originally about like European eating styles and like what I don't know how an American would eat pasta, but I think it's gone beyond this. It's gone beyond this. But like I say, it's got to happen eventually. It's just very difficult for me on Sunday to find the time to just cook up some pasta. I know somebody was like, just film yourself eating it and then show the clip. Um, Then Curtis Hoffman. Magic from the Doom still active and affecting magma on Planetos. Werewood roots touching magma chambers under Westeros. Time traveling brand connected to magma and controlling the flood of basalts and volcanoes. Um, this is Curtis's. He's trying to fuck with me because he knows that I've spoken quite a bit on how the geology of Westeros doesn't make any sense at all. That there's not enough geothermic activity. Like the only place that there's volcanoes is Dragonstone, which is really ridiculous. Considering that there's mountains and all sorts of other things, like, and there's basalt in the neck and things like this, that volcanic rock we find, obsidian north of the wall and all of this, and yet we can't find, there's no fucking volcanoes anywhere. There's no fucking volcanoes. So he's saying that it's actually time traveling brand and the werewood roots are affecting magma flow, and things like that. Which, that's fun, but I don't know if George was thinking about it. Let's see here. Also before the stream, Connor, Oysterblood. Robin is the true son of Jon Arryn, but Lysa uncontrollably teaked him in the womb to look like Peter through either a belief that he was Peter's son, or through her obsession with the child they lost. This explains why he's so sickly, due to Lysa messing with his DNA. As weird as that sounds, Connor, you know that George has written very similar stuff to that in Wildcards. You know that, like, in Wildcards, so in Wildcards, there's this idea that, like, this virus causes everybody to have genetic mutations, and so a certain group of people die, a certain group of people become, gross mutants, and then, like, aces, like, still look great and have fabulous superpowers. And usually when an actual Joker or ace has a child with another Joker or ace, it's like never viable because the wild card gene gets passed down, and so you're like rolling the same dice again. Because the thing with the wild card gene was like certain percentage die, certain percentage are mutants, and then like very slim chance that you're an ace, like 1%. And so they have the story about the great and powerful turtle wants to have like a regular life, and it turns out that the woman he wants to have has like the gene, and he has the gene, and therefore like the kid's chance of survival would be incredibly small or become a mutant. But then he names like two other superheroes that got together and had a viable child. And for a fucking like page and a half, George R. Martin writes about how the one person's like telekinetic abilities like subconsciously manipulated the DNA in order to allow a viable child. It was very clearly, it was just like, they accidentally wrote that like one superhero was like the child of another superhero, and now they had to fix that. So it's just kind of funny. But yeah. Okay, now we're back on the regular banner here. Okay. Why no leaks of the Winds of Winter? No progress on actual pages. George has an army of minions, editors, publishers, etc. Not one can give him something. So here's the thing: is he doesn't actually have a he has an army of minions. He has a group of people that are his helpers. I don't know if he ever has more than 2 at a time. I've never seen more than 2 at a time in pictures or in appearances. But even supposing he has up to 5, I don't think they help him with writing. I think they're helping him with events, scheduling, managing his house, things like this. Taking care of his horses, stuff like this. He's got a staff for that, but I don't know if he has any staff that actually relate to his books. And then editors, he has one editor, and even that editor does very minimal um, work. Like he does pass his like manuscripts um, to her, but her comments, you actually see like the number of edit like comments when people went to the Cushing Library in the like it's like one every 4 pages she has got like some little typo or something. Like George is really because he edits himself. He edits all the wild cards and has been for years and edits other stuff. He he's a really good editor. When he writes, it's near perfect to begin with. So he has one editor. Publisher, yeah, he's got some publishers and stuff, but um, that stuff is passed to those people. But I don't think it's an army, and I don't think any of the people have the financial interest in like leaking anything. So I don't think the minions would have access. The editors and publishers certainly don't have any economic interest in leaking anything. There's not that many of them. I mean, the publishers and stuff that deal with them, you're talking like, at most half a dozen people that he's talking about. He's getting, I'm talking about American publishers, British publishers. So there's not too many opportunities to actually leak something. So thus it's we won't see anything. Plus, there actually has to be something to leak. So, all right, got that one. Having hernia surgery tomorrow morning. So nodding out of this question. Why no holidays in Westeros? Not even one. Novos has Xmas, but Westeros you can't even Westeros even have a regional one. Do you have any holiday ideas? They do have Maiden's Day, which is something from Fire and Blood. We're not sure what Maiden's Day is. Obviously, it's some sort of like celebration of the maiden with the faith of the seven. But we've heard that there is a holiday called Maiden's Day. And because there's Maiden's Day, I imagine that there's at least 5 other holidays for the other 5 speakable gods. I imagine there's a Father's Day and a Mother's Day and a Crone's Day and a Warrior's Day. I'm imagining, but there is a Maiden's Day. For holiday ideas, I did once joke in my season watches that there was a Merry Day of the Seven. Like when Christmas came around, that we just had like Merry Day of the Seven. Like, oh yeah, we already got this one. Loved by One is about Robert being the only one who appreciates he killed Ares while everybody else hates him for it. I'm trying to think if that would actually like work. Like Loved by One, Robert being the only one who appreciates, so as if like Robert thought it was a kindness for him, but he didn't do the kindness for Robert. He did the kindness for everybody else. Though I assume that everybody thought he did the kindness for House Lannister. So that it would be like maybe his father would be the one that loved him or something. It's a better idea. It's obviously, a better idea than what actually like is in there. Cause by the way it's phrased with the second appearance that, it's about Tyrion. But yeah. I mean, does it work? Does it work with Robert loving Jaime, for thinking that he did it for him? But I don't know if Robert really, I mean, I'd have to, if I have any quotes of like Robert liking liking Jaime for that. I thought there was always like a weirdness between Robert and Jaime. But hmm, would Johanna have loved him for if she had lived? Yeah, she would, but she wouldn't have loved him for a lie. Like Johanna would have loved him for being a son, right? Yeah. So that's the weird. Um, I'm confused how Jaime avoided Tyrion's resentment. You're kind of right. Like even though, yeah, you're kind of right that he should have resented his brother. Um, it doesn't right if somebody did that to you, wouldn't you feel it like one like at least at minimum it would be patronizing, right? But then patronizing and then it led to so much heartache and horribleness that you'd think you'd like, yes, Jamie's heart was somewhat in the right place. Like he wanted to, you know, do something for his little brother, but it was like this weird patronizing thing, right? Um, like the common stereotype is like the uncle that takes some guy to a a whorehouse and has him lose his virginity. But whenever you hear of those stories, it's not like the nephew is like thankful of the uncle. It's always this like very inappropriate thing that the uncle did, right? Yeah. Um the kindness is how Tyrion perceives Jaime. Jaime was the only one who didn't tease or torture him. The kindness he never did was just indifference. Hmm. Hmm. I mean, obviously that works better, but I still think it's like he says he's always good to him though. Um, he actively thinks that no, I was good to him, not I was indifferent to him. Like, if it would, I understand what you're saying. Like, it should have been his line should have been something like Tyrion always thought I was kind, but I never thought I was being kind. I always thought I was just ignoring him. Like, or he thought I was kind for never teasing him, but in truth, I just couldn't be bothered. I was too infatuated with Cersei to spend any time. He mistook my indifference for kindness. Like you had they said something like that, but he specifically says I was always good to him. Um, so he actually believes that he was good, that he did do kindness in a general sense, like day to day, and that this like incident was a kindness thing. Um, Wait, so Tyrion thinks Jaime told him the truth about the hooker. Well, until obviously Taisha was never a sex worker, but he thought that Jaime thought his confession was real, and then later, after all of those incidents, Jaime, when he's breaking Tyrion out, he tells him the truth about it. Um, Originally, this was all brought up because someone's like, if this is something eating at him so much that he feels the need to like break Tyrion out of prison, shouldn't he be thinking about it more and having more guilt about it? And it's like, well, he does think about it 3 times, but um, the whole thing doesn't really make any sense. Um, the kindness is saving Taisha from the robbers, but he legitimately did save Taisha from the robbers. Like that was something that was real. that was the kindness he did do, and then lied and said he didn't do that kindness. That was actually real. um, how about the kindness Jaime did was Tywin convinced Jaime to lie to Tyrion. Uh that the one is really Tywin, but I think Tywin loves Jaime no matter what. But because Jaime's like so awesome and the perfect Lannister in Tywin's mind. Um, uh, is the way Tywin convinced Jaime. Oh, like Jaime thinks that it really was a kindness to lie to Tyrion, but he clearly doesn't think it's an actual kindness. He thinks it's a fake kindness. That it's a kindness he never did. Oh, did anyone interview Taisha about this? Sadly, we do not know. Um, the entire conversation is about killing Aerys. Loved by one is relating to that, not Taisha. I mean, I understand that like taken in isolation, it should be that, but the problem is that later on in Storm, there is the clear Tyrion. There's the clear connection of trying to make it about Tyrion. Um, like he's using the same language. Um, he's saying, he's using the same language as in the first one, in order to try to. So he says, and Tyrion, this is the list of people that love him. You know, he could not die. Cersei was waiting for him. Cersei loves him. She would have need of him. And Tyrion, his little brother, who loved him for a lie. Now, if Jaime were loved by somebody else, um, you know, the other thing about like the Robert thing is that like Robert is dead, and he's dead at the end of Clash. And so he can't, Jaime can't, like, Jaime is not loved by him anymore because he's dead. Um, I mean, unless you're talking about like loved in the past sense, but it's not like I was loved by someone. I am loved. Like Jaime truly, like he's thinking in the present tense that there's someone out there that loves him. And here, when the language is the same, like Tyrion, his brother who loved him for a lie. And even if we're talking about the first one, let's say I grant you that the first one is about Robert. We now still have the problem of the second one. The second one is just as problematic as the first, right? Tyrion, his little brother who loved him for a lie. What lie is Tyrion loving him for? It's the same problem again. So even if we grant that the first one is about Robert, which I don't think it is, but even if we do accept that the first one is about Robert, this second one is equally problematic. Tyrion, his little brother who loved him for a lie. We have to explain. We still have to explain that. Am I wrong for imagining the Kingsguard as effeminate and sassy at the Tower of Joy? Ugh, obviously, we swore a vow. Our knees do not bend easily, especially for you. That's that's an odd one. Like you're saying that like you want everyone at the Tower of Joy to have like 1980s stereotype like gay men accents. Um um I mean, I suppose if you're saying like like all of a sudden well, this is a very funny thing, right? Because now if we're saying if we're gonna make now you're making me like weirdly sexualize the Tower of Joy. Um, because he's talking about like knees bending. So they're like, I came to Storm's End to lift the siege, Ned told them. And Lords Tyrell and Redwynes dipped their banners. And all the knights bent the knees to pledge his fealty. I was certainly been among them. Our knees do not bend easily, said Arthur Dane. You know, he's saying he doesn't drop to his knees to perform fellatio easily. Um, but I don't know. I mean, it is kind of funny to think the reverse because most people think about it as like this big manly, like our knees do not bend. I I thought I'd find you on Dragonstone, but no. Um. Oh, thank you, Wrath of Khan. And no question. Just wanted to buy you a cup of coffee. Thanks for the quality and quantity. Thank you, Sarah. I appreciate it. Um, all right. Jaime thinks Tyrion is grateful for setting him up with Tysha when he never did at all. Tyrion just loved him because he was his brother. But didn't Jaime legitimately set them up? I mean, it turns out that the saving was actually real, right? So it should be that like it's a kindness that Tyrion doesn't know about or thinks isn't a kindness because Jaime lied about it and claimed that it wasn't a kindness. Like Jaime does a legitimate kindness in that he saves he saves Tysha. Um, so that's like a real that's a real kindness. That's not a lie. Oh, here we go. Wrath of Khan. Sorry, my chat message didn't go through, but my previous question. Glad to be able to do it with my first super chat. Let me find you, Wrath of Khan. Oh, here we go. What are your thoughts of Jaime sleeping on the werewood stump? Maybe some brand parallels. Yeah, I mean, I think we're definitely with regards to that. We're definitely supposed to be thinking about um, him being affected by the werewood net. He's also having his head is also in moonlight, so we have some ambiguity. Like, is the messaging from the moon, and that light, or is it from the werewood? Is it from the werewood? And so you're not supposed to know at this point, but um, nonetheless, like at other times, especially when we're talking about like the werewood stumps and the hollow hill with Thoros of Myr and him receiving visions there and the ghost of High Art, we're supposed to be thinking that these visions are coming from somebody. And the question is who. Um, I guess I would argue that it has to be time traveling Bran. Um, because what I mean, who else is there that cares? So the messaging from Jaime is he has this fever dream, and then he goes back and he saves Brienne and save like what benefit is there to saving Brienne? How does that change everything? Um, and in the immediate sense, it hasn't really changed anything yet, but Brienne, I suppose, will run into Lady Stoneheart, and she's on a mission to save Arya and Sansa and stuff like this. um, it certainly fits with. I mean, affecting events could be a time traveling Bran, but I can't think of anyone else who would care that Brienne is alive. Like what who wants Brienne alive? Does Marwyn would Marwyn care? Glass Candles. Does Sorella Sand care? Does Bloodraven care? Like why would any of these people care? Nobody seems to have a connection with Brienne. The only person that could possibly have a connection that I can think of is a time traveling Bran who's trying to just tip pieces right and left to try to change events. That's my guess. Um, um, how far down was I? Um, uh, maybe make more sense if Tyrion loves Jaime for defending him from Cersei. Uh, but it has to be like a lie, right? It has to be something that he didn't actually do. This is the thing, is like it's such a confusing kind of thing. Like a kindness he never did. Like what kindness? So, he thinks that he thinks Tyrion thinks that Jaime was um protecting him from Cersei, but in fact Jaime wasn't doing it at all, and Cersei actually had no interest in hurting Tyrion. Um why even lie about that? Like man, it's just you know George wrote that line thinking like he was going to come up with something crazy, and it's it never came out, never worked out. um a little Warhammer 40k lore. Emperor of Mankind is half dead in the Golden Throne, which keeps him alive because of psychic powers holding back chaos. Reminds me of Bloodraven. Maybe Bloodraven holding back the others. Um, that is true. So what he's talking about with Warhammer 40,000, there this is a world, a universe. The galaxy um, is is there's an empire of millions of worlds that is completely Nazi empire, and they're like the closest things to protagonists, which is really weird because everybody else in the story is horrible, and they all just fight and try to kill each other. But um, there is a super, like there is an emperor that everybody fights for, who is basically he's kind of, I mean, I think he's probably more built on Dune, the God Emperor of Dune, um, and then taking that lore and like expanding upon it. But this guy, I mean, I think he's actually in like a living hell. Well, I mean, God Emperor of Dune, Leto actually describes his existence as a living hell too. So, but they're all fighting for this emperor who's like not even human anymore. He's been like absorbed into this giant throne or whatever. But you're right that all of these like sci-fi elements seem to come back and start. We see them all over the place. Um, but yeah, is the emperor holding back the chaos? Oh man, because that changes everything really. So in the universe, like there's this chaos rift, and all of these like chaos people are trying to destroy the galaxy. I didn't realize that the emperor's mind is actually keep holding back the rift some. I didn't know that about the lore. Um, um, the people who are saying that the cost of living is way higher now. Well, like I say, it was in 2000 in 2022. In 2023, inflation settled. Inflation is low now. It's only 3%. So, um, housing. This is the thing: is everybody's working on old data. Housing prices and inflation have been crazy. No, inflation settled in 2023. It's um, yeah. Wait, rent did drop. It dropped 1% last year. Um, you know, it's really weird that it dropped. Um, is he really doubling down on it? Yep. Food is so expensive. I don't know what to tell you. The thing is, once something inflates, it stays high, but wage rate goes up with it. So you have to look at like which is higher, wage rate or inflation. So wage rate right now is higher than inflation. And during COVID and stuff, it was lower. So like that was a bad time. But this is a big thing. You look at a wage rate versus inflation kind of things. Um, aren't Americans really keep starting with payments? Some. This is the whole thing. Some. Um, I mean, all this is always the case. There's always people that are trying to um, thoughts on OJ Simpson trial. How could Fullman know that OJ didn't have an alibi? Look, this is a really old situation, but um, OJ Simpson, um, I mean, OJ had a kind of alibi. He had the Big Mac attack. Kojo and the Big Mac attack. He claimed that he was getting a Big Mac. He went to McDonald's with his friend, and then they like left. But anyway, I think it's pretty clear that OJ did it. Um, but you get a good enough lawyer who puts enough doubt in people's minds, and spend enough money, you can get people off. But keep in mind that OJ was then convicted of a wrongful death and had to pay all the money anyway. It's weird, these ripples in time, because you actually think about the OJ Simpson trial. Kardashian was one of his lawyers, and so Kardashian made all of his money off of OJ. And then you think of like the success of his daughter is based on like the success of like Kardashian. So in a sense, like these ripples in time, like when you think of like OJ and that money going to the Kardashian family, and then them bringing up the Kardashians and like all of this crazy stuff, like one of them marrying Kanye West and like people being influencers and stuff like that, that would have never happened, had say OJ lost, or Kardashian had not been hired. Really funny things like that when you think about these little ripples of in time. But yeah, that like keeping up with the Kardashians would have not been a thing. Would have not been a thing. It's kind of funny. The economy is always bad to a communist because the economy isn't communist yet. That's true. Hasn't the stock market had its worst day in its history? Mm-mm, mm-mm. Let's see here. Let's see what we can find here. I'm trying to find a good graph. Let's do Dow Jones. Dow Jones Industrial Average. Let's go back, 6 months? There you go. Here's the stock market. This is February 2024. You can see it's doing pretty well. I mean, I don't see anything claiming that it's doing bad. I mean, we can do what? S&P? S&P on its way up. See, I don't know. Don't know what it's all about. Everything seems to be going up. Oh yes, in another stream you said you've never seen a total solar eclipse. So worth it. The world goes dark, cold, and quiet. Bucket list level experience. I think when I was in high school, there was one where I had class and somebody like, I just remember coming in late and was like, I was watching the eclipse. But yeah, I don't think I've ever experienced where it kind of like things kind of go dark. But I don't know. Next solar eclipse for Maryland. April 8th, 2024. Next total eclipse can be seen from. All right. There it is. April 8th, 2024. Okay. It's coming. It's coming. We'll see. I'll see this one. I'll stare at it and go blind. I'd argue that most workers have lost some ground for some 40 years, and we have only had their wages somewhat exceed inflation for about 2 years. So of course, people aren't seeing that as a significant gain. Well, what we can do is we can look at the inflation rate versus the wage rate. And let's see what we got here. So generally speaking, wage rate is usually higher than inflation. And this was a kind of a big thing when I worked at Social Security, because Social Security benefits actually are pegged to wage rate. And there was some discussion of like, because, you know, insolvability of the trust fund is whether or not, if you switched it to inflation, what, you know, how much would you be saving versus wage rate, and whether that would be a but you know, the argument was like, well, wait a minute, the whole point that retirees standard of living should increase with the rest of society, so therefore it should be with wage rate growth. But here, this graph is only to 2023, but you can kind of see that generally speaking, wage rate is above inflation. And this is, say, an unusual time during COVID where inflation spiked. But you can see wage rate goes way up too, but it did not outpace inflation. So when you talk about like, are people getting richer, you look at this distance, and are people getting better off, you look at this distance. So I mean, this idea that like that wages don't, I mean, I can tell you for a fact that wages, you know, 4 out of 5 years, wage growth is going to be higher than inflation. Um, and so generally speaking, you know, it's an indicator that people are better off. I mean, as much as, you know, money leads to happiness. Let's see here if we let's see another one. We have a historical one. Wage rate. Let's go back for like 50 years. So that's not really great. The one graph was one of the best ones out there, but but for example, here's what we can see, like COVID and why people were upset. And that is in black, we have here inflation. Inflation is also called CPI, Consumer Price Index. If you ever see that in a chart, Consumer Price Index, it's determined by the Department of Bureau of Labor Statistics, that they take a basket of goods that generally people like spend on, and then they look at those prices and they try to determine you know, what a general cost of living increase is. They have specific ones for different stuff. So for instance, you can look at like CPI healthcare, which is like, if you're elderly, healthcare is a bigger expense. So you might want to look at CPI healthcare. So there's different CPIs, different inflation rates that you can look at to determine if your you know, your wage rate is going to be higher. So and there was an argument in Social Security like, oh, is it really fair to be using the regular wage growth because that's for average people versus like when healthcare uh, rates might have very high inflation. But anyway, you can see that like during COVID, this very unusual situation happened where inflation outpaced wage growth, but now wage growth is back at outpacing inflation. You can see inflation is down 3%. You know, wage rates up in this 5-6%. Good times. Good times. Yeah, somebody caught this. Yeah. Welcome to America, man. I mean, sometimes, I am American. I mean, I like my free refills. I like ice and drinks. I like Mexican food. There's a lot of things that are very American about me. Very. um 2023, the disparity between the haves and the have-nots has never been wider. That alone is enough to say the worst year ever. A shitty system doing great is not going to make people happy. But like I say, like now, the thing is now, look, income disparity is of course a problem. I certainly agree with that we should work to eliminate income disparity. But the thing is there's no natural mechanism in the economy to produce more income disparity. That redistribution is done through the government. It's done through progressive taxes and through redistribution through social programs. And so, I don't see any evidence that 2023 was like the worst yet for it. Because I'll say that like income disparity and wealth disparity is impossible to measure, but income disparity, it's difficult, but they do like Gini coefficients. They call it, which is the how unequal a society is. And generally speaking, the more unequal the society, the more unstable it is. The more crime, the more likely a government will be overthrown. If you just have a bunch of rich people and a bunch of poor people, the poor people, want to overthrow it. If your country is all poor people, you're pretty safe. If your country is all rich people, it's pretty safe. It's when you have poor people and rich people living together that causes problems, because the poor people look at the rich people and are like, fuck, you know? But I'm trying to think, like, it's really, data on Gini coefficients is really hard to find, but see, even here, I'm finding like it only up to like 2020. So I don't know if 2023 was a particularly bad year. I'm sure not much changed with it, but you can kind of see like here's the Gini coefficient for United States, and you can kind of see that like over time the United States became more and more unequal, especially during the 2000s, and then it's just kind of been lingering up here. It dropped here. I imagine this is because of COVID or something, you know. But but like I said before, like, economic data is supposed to inform policy like making. So we can't just like constantly go through days and say like the economy sucks. Like you just can't do that. Like what's the point of keeping the data? I live in Florida. Is it too late for the state to turn around? No, I mean, everything is changeable, man. Like everything things get better. Everybody can come back. And the there were a lot of like bad states that have turned around, like the state of Virginia. You know, it used to not be that great of a state. Now it's getting pretty nice. So I'm not saying there's hope for Florida. Maybe it's having a bad run, but uh, maybe it can come back. I don't know. I don't know. I like Tampa. I like Miami. They're nice cities. You know. Um, what is Hillary? Who Hillary Swank is not hot. First of all, um, let me see here. You trying to tell me that Hillary Swank is not hot? First of all, Hillary Swank is definitely like was definitely real life. She's definitely real life pretty hot. Okay, come on, come on. What is this ridiculous standards? Ridiculous standards. Hillary Swank, of course. What Hillary Swank was beautiful. What are you talking about? I don't know what she looks like now. Preston, a stream on my birthday with politics suck. Best day ever. Thank you. Happy birthday. um. Mm, mm, mm. Um. Booming economy that benefits workers. We have not seen since neoliberalism took over in the 1980s and the right and left bought into trickle down economics. Um, so I don't think anybody like agrees with trickle down economics. Like no one. I mean, maybe some crazy right wingers. I don't think anyone would accept that like trickle down economics like is a thing. I mean, sometimes you hear it where people are like, well, the businesses create the jobs and the jobs like employ people. So sometimes they'll like try to shove it in like an employment thing. But I don't know any left winger that believes in trickle down economics. Like in America, like, you know, like no one thinks that like the wealth of the rich like gets passed down to the poor. Like no one believes that. Um, I mean, I know a few like right wing business owners that might be like, I employ all these people, but like I've never heard anyone, any left winger in America say like buy into trickle down economics. Like that's, I mean, it's a joke in the economics community. Like I say, there's no mechanism in economics that like passes wealth to the lower class. Everybody accepts that. That's why you have a progressive tax structure. Like the progressive tax structure is exists in order to correct for wealth rising in a capitalist system. When will there be another Trey collaboration? Oh, probably soon. You know, Trey's always busy with different stuff, but I need to reach out to him. But yeah, I love doing stuff with Trey. Um, and I recently made another trivia thing, but I think Carmine has somebody else on the that he wants to um, do it with. But yeah, no, I'll reach out to him soon. But I love doing stuff with Trey. Um, uh, uh, uh. George should drop a song of Ice and Fire and write Duncan Egg. Yeah, I could see that. I think it's I mean, as much as I don't want any attention to be taken away from um the winds of winter, like I do think it's probably something that's more achievable. Um So let's see here. Ever thought Gerald Hightower, we swore a Vyline was weird? They are presumably following Rhaegar's orders, even though his children were disinherited. Thought Hightowers obeyed Aerys over Rhaegar as Lord Commander. So there was a before Dance came out. There was a lot of the R plus L equals J discussions, and even after Dance came out, were about like why are the Kingsguard there, and that this idea that the Kingsguard prove that Jon is the heir and that they're there defending the heir. However, there's clearly like the Barristan chapters in A Dance with Dragons where Barristan straight up says that like Kingsguard can be ordered to defend people, including paramours. And so it completely like undoes that. Like, they could be there for whatever reasons, but yeah, so Hightower is there by Rhaegar's orders. And it's like, even if the children are disinherited, it doesn't matter because the prince's order is still there. Because in like I say, even if they're guarding a paramour, they still have to follow the order and do it. I'm trying to find the right line. Right, it's definitely. Now, I think we've all kind of, especially like talking about the Jaime discussion today, we can kind of, take certain lines from the early books and be like, how like, how stuck is George into these things? Is it, can you really use all your kind of legalistic kind of ideas on these kind of early books? I don't know. What did he say? He said did he say, was it mistress was the right? Here it is. Yeah, I found it. Mm-mm. The first duty of a Kingsguard was to defend the king from harm or threat. The White Knights were sworn to obey the king's command as well, to keep his secrets, counsel. Strictly speaking, it was purely a king's choice whether or not to extend the Kingsguard protection to others, even those of royal blood. Some kings thought it right and proper to dispatch Kingsguard to serve and defend their wives and children, siblings, aunts, uncles, cousins of greater or lesser degree, and occasionally even their lovers, mistresses, and bastards. Others preferred to use household knights and men at arms. So, I mean, this idea that like, well, they were defending Rhaegar, and or Rhaegar had ordered them to look after his mistress. I mean, that's enough. That's enough for them to be there. I don't think there's too much analysis that you need to go further in on. I mean, if you want to think that R plus L equals J, which yeah, that's probably the case. I don't think like the we swore a vow line is really the money one. I mean, I think if you're going for the basics of R plus L equals J, it's just like, well, Jon is thinking about lacking a mother in the first book and wondering who his mom is, and then there's this woman having a baby in a bed of blood. It's not that hard of a riddle, and I think that's for a while I was like, well, it's got to be more complicated than that, and then I was just like, oh, again, maybe it's not that complicated. But should they have been obeying Ares? I mean, Ares, they I guess they just Ares never was able to get a order to them, right? I mean, yeah, Hightower being there is the weird one because obviously like Went and Dane are Rhaegar's friends, but Hightower, like what's his game? I don't know. I don't know. We don't, the Hightower game is a weird one. But maybe he was there to ensure maybe he was there to ensure that the baby gets killed or something or taken off. I don't know. Um, if the Hightowers are obsessed with prophecy, maybe he was thinking an egg was going to hatch or something. Say something bad about Brazilians. Jeez, that's a tough one. There's a lot of crime in Rio. Is that bad enough? It's hard to say. It's hard to say anything bad about Brazilians. They're very very nice people, and they have very good food, and they're very welcoming and friendly. Um, the worst you can say about them that is that they have a very high crime rate. Um, but uh, but that's about the worst you can do. That's about the worst you can do is be like, why can't you follow the law? Um, do you think the Vale Klansmen are a dropped plot? It's funny to say Klansmen. I was like, oh god, the Klansmen. Um, I don't know if it's so much of a dropped plot, just George Gardens, and he like throws out little things here and there. So I think there's two different um ideas here, right? There's the Vale clans that are in the Kingswood, and then there's the Vale clans who went home with better steel, right? And so you got two different Vale clans plots going on. Um, the one with them going home with better steel, I think, is more likely going to be forgotten. The one about them being in the Kingswood, um, we had at least a reference to them in A Feast for Crows, where like the or was no, I'm sorry, it was actually in A Dance with Dragons. It was in the Watcher chapter. They're brought up because, and it's subtle, but they're brought up when they're talking about Tristane going back to King's Landing, and that they were going to be attacked by Cersei, but they would all yell half man," and and kill Tristane. And the idea was that their plan was to pose as the Vale Klansmen. It's very subtle. Um, right. I doubt like I certainly didn't think about it on my first read, but this is it. He says, um, I'm asked to court only that I may witness this attack with my own eyes and thereby absolve the queen of any blame. Oh, and these outlaws, they will be shouting half man as they attack. Sir Balon may even catch the glimpse of the imp, though no one else will. This is the idea is that where would Tyrion go? He would go to hide in the Kingswood with his clansmen, and that these clansmen would be attacking Tristane. Of course, so like George definitely is like thinking about them, like they certainly exist there. Um, however, I'm trying to think. I mean, will they affect like John Conn's march and things like that? I don't know. I don't know, but I think that George definitely like at least has his mind on the ones in the Kingswood. I'm not so sure about the ones that have gone back to the Vale. Oh, was Cyclone's wife even an ace or a joker? Ah, I think she there was this wild cards discussions. Um, do you only because right? Let me see here. Relatives. Cornelia Owens is his wife. Mistral, the daughter. Yeah, I don't know why but they brought, they definitely brought up Cyclone in what was it called? Winter's Chill. What's the name of the the short story? Mistral. She inherited her powers to manipulate the wind from her father. Um, I guess it doesn't. I guess it. I guess her. Yeah, I guess there's nothing there on why. Yeah, no, that's a good point. That like, but there was the big issue of in the the tale with the great and powerful turtle. Where his his fiance wife or whatever like mentions that she was sick when she was young and got better or something strange like that. And um but it's go back to that ridiculous ridiculous story. Winter's yeah, it's Winter's Chill. Um well. Yeah, I guess I don't know anything about like Cyclone's wife having powers, you know. But I want to say there was something about Turtle's wife having sick and being sick and then having it. Um, Dr. Tachyon like going on a long spiel about telekinesis, rewriting DNA. I just started reading the Bible for the first time, and I noticed that there are lots of interbreeding in it. Abraham is married to his sister. Do you think Targaryens are a reference to that? Um, no, I think it's more in reference to actual like European like families or even Egyptian families where it's more of a function of feudalism. What like because I like in the Bible, the function of these people marrying into the family is there's not that many characters. There's not that many people on Earth, so they kind of like marry each other. Um, Cain and Abel must have had to have married their sisters, right, and things like that to produce kids and stuff like that. That's just a function of these Genesis tales where there's just not that many people. Well, inbreeding in these royal families um, has to do with wealth and keeping wealth in the family and power consolidation and stuff like that. For a long time, there was something called cross cousin marriages where you would that was done um, in order to keep wealth in feudal families and stuff like that because they kind of understood that brother and sister would just would lead to badness, but you could eliminate a lot of it by just doing cross cousin marriages. Like they, people we think of them as being people being so stupid, but at the same time, like they figured some things out. But yeah, this idea that like your cousin would marry the cousin of the cousin, and you'd be able to create kind of this more complicated daisy chain down, um, by continuing to have like cousins marry each other. Um, and still, I mean, Middle East cousin marriages is still wildly popular. The I don't know if I ever told you the story about, oh god, a buddy of mine. So when I was living in Jordan, um, a buddy of mine was volunteering in a Gazan refugee camp, and the thing about in Jordan, West Bank refugees were given citizenship, but and there's West Bank camps, but the camps are now like built up into cities. But Gazans don't have citizenship, and so they have a much harder time in Jordan just with jobs and everything. But nonetheless, he's volunteering in this Gazan refugee camp, and he one day like these two guys come over and call them shabab. Like shabab is like the Arabic word for like guy, right? And so these guys are in there, these shabab are in their late 20s, and they're like, Dave, we're just so depressed. We're so depressed. Like there's just nothing, there's nothing for us. Like, we have no jobs. There's no hope of work. We've never even like kissed or held hands with a girl. Like our lives are horrible. And my friend Dave's like, yeah, no, I understand that sucks. I don't know what to do. And they're like, yeah, like our only hope is that, uh, eventually maybe like some relative will have pity on us and we can like marry our ugly cousin or something, and we don't even like any of our cousins. And he's like, yeah, well, it sounds like a really horrible situation. And then they're like, do you have any like American friends who would like to do a language exchange? And he's like, no, like, no, I know what you're trying to do. And he's like, do you know any girls, American girls who want to do language exchange? He's like, no, I'm not introducing you guys to anybody. But it's funny that like people were not wild about these notions. Like, oh, I've got to marry my cousin. Ugh, you're kind of forced into it. That's why, I think like how Danny and Viserys feel about each other is uh is somewhat real in the sense that they don't seem to like each other until Dance with Dragons and that weird story about Viserys. But I always hated like in Fire and Blood how there's just these talks about these like brothers and sisters all of a sudden just like being wildly attracted to each other and just wanting to bang, and you're like, what world is this? No one wants to do this. Um uh how fast do you think that U.S. could become fascist totalitarian? To me, the Constitution, equal protection, and democracy seem baked into the U.S. legislature. Could be 4 more years of Trump. Could 4 more years of Trump undo it all? Um. Uh. In truth, I would see violence happening first. So, I mean, take a situation like last January 6th. Um, not last January 6th, but the January 6th incident, um, of 2001. Like, had that gone further, what would have happened? Would the Maryland governor or the Virginia governor or somebody like done something with the National Guard? Would somebody have done something, or would have everybody just like sat on their butts and done nothing, and like waited for lawyers and infighting and things like this? Um, and yeah, I don't know. Um, people were very surprised that during Bush versus Gore, how civil everything was, and how we just kind of took it, for many of us, for half of America, like, uh, George W. Bush kind of stole the election, and and even though like Biden didn't steal the election, still a lot of people saw him as for stealing the election, and for the most part, no one did anything, right? So most people don't do anything. Most people don't do actions. Like most people don't like go to grab their arms and like stop things. So maybe it's completely possible that something like that could work. And then, but what mechanisms are in place to sort of stop that and slow it down and things like that. So I don't know. When you have a Supreme Court that's got you know three appointees from Trump and two more that are very very right wing, um, can't you eventually get away with everything? Like everyone, like right now, like the idea of whether Trump committed insurrection, which is pretty obvious to everybody, but everyone is also like, yeah, it's going to go to the Supreme Court and they're going to claim that it's not, or they're going to delay it. And you're like, oh, like they'll carry water like that. So I think our big problem is that we got the Supreme Court is all screwed up, and that's all Trump's doing, putting on three justices. So, yeah, could he undo it? Yeah, I think he could undo it. Yeah. And the damage he'd do after that. It's like the discussion of like Sulla and Caesar. For those that don't like in Roman history, we kind of all have heard of Caesar as the guy who like became dictator, and Julius Caesar, and before he was assassinated. But there was another guy named Sulla who stepped in and did emergency powers. You're only supposed to be consul for 6 months, but Sulla said, no, it's an emergency. And he stayed in for 2 years and then stepped down. And so when Caesar talked about his emergency powers and him doing his emergency powers for, I think, 6 years, there was references to Sulla, that Sulla, even though Sulla like stepped down and like restored the Republic and all of that, everyone still kind of like Sulla had opened this door and ruined everything. Well, now that you've broken the rule that a consul can become dictator for 2 years, Caesar pushed it and became dictator for 6, and then Augustus was dictator for 20 or for 40, essentially. So that's the thing, is even when it's not Trump, it's like, what is he going to do to break the system? So that's kind of what I worry about, is just what kind of crap that he can just break the system more and more. But hopefully he will not win. I don't think he will. I mean, but we shall see. It worries. I think it worries all of us. Making Taisha's story true is my biggest issue. Shay and Sansa's relationship with Tyrion show how his protector fantasy is flawed, but Taisha validates it. Huh. I mean, you're right. I agree with you. I guess it's to like just I guess it's just to like gaslight him to make him even more crazy, you know. But you're right that there is something really weird in there, in that like he feels he needs to protect Shay and Sansa, and it was the same kind of like sucker play that got him to like Taisha, but turns out Taisha was innocent the whole time. Yeah, you're right. You're right. I mean, it's the same with like, doesn't Penny has to be like evil in the end, or else it's just going to validate Tyrion's protector fantasy, right? Like, or he's gonna do something horrible to her, like Taisha, and one of the two is gonna happen with Penny, right? Like, there's no good ending for Penny. Like, she's either going to be evil, like she's a Littlefinger agent or something, and she's gonna try to kill Tyrion, and he's gonna be like, I fell for it again. I got shade again. Or she's gonna be innocent, and he's gonna be like, kill her. I mean, he almost strangles her to death in the sample chapters, right? So, I mean, he's like a an inch away from strangling her to death in the sample chapters. So, one of those two is gonna happen. Poor Penny. Taisha was actually a sex worker. Jamie lied in a Storm of Swords as a prank. That'd be pretty evil. That'd be pretty crazy. um Super Bowl 50 is yours. Tight tackles are real, albeit archaic. Where the fuck did you learn a pre 1970s football term that football nerds, the net, AI coaches, former high school college players could not identify? um, so I mean, I don't know. Tight tackle, I just kind of learned from a friend of mine who like, I think he specifically brought it up because it was like a weird, obscure term. Um, but I have seen it like occasionally since. I'm not saying it's very common, but it's kind of just like in sports, people are always looking for new synonyms for stuff to make things interesting because they're just kind of sick of writing the same things over and over again. So occasionally I've seen it. And I think I remember being like in high school and a buddy of mine who was super into football bringing it up as a like an interesting obscure term. Um and thus it like stuck in my head. I mean, the randomness of it all. So it's very funny when everybody's like tight tackle's not a thing and I'm like, no, no, it's actually a fucking thing, but but no, it's just a buddy of mine that really liked football that that brought it up. I don't know where he learned it. I mean, he was a football player, but um, conversations about killing Ares, nothing to do with Taisha. No, I mean I get it. It's weirdly shoved in there, but like I say, like it doesn't explain that same problem with it with a Storm of Swords. But yeah. Um, and like I say, when George wrote A Clash of Kings, he probably didn't know what was going to come. Did Jamie know Bobby was dead at that point? Um, Trying to think here. Well, the Whispering Wood um, happens after. Oh, Whispering Wood happens after. Well, the Whispering Wood has to happen after the war has begun, and the war begins when Ned is arrested. So the war begins when Robert's dead. So Jamie definitely knows Robert's dead before he's even captured. I mean, the whole act of going to war is 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 that. Um, Killing Ares isn't a good thing either. Surely he could have just incapacitated Rossard and the king. Technically, wouldn't be breaking his vow then. Huh. I mean, the thing is, he only had to kill Rossard, right? I mean, then who's gonna like carry out the order? Um, like no one else is gonna go near Wildfire and doesn't know anything about it, right? He just has to go kill the pyromancers. But I think I don't think Jamie. I think that the explanation is Jamie's a little kid at this point. He's like what 17, 18 years old. He he's not thinking straight. He's just gonna start slashing, um, and you know So I think that there's just that. Um, you know, like the Tower of Joy isn't already sexual. It's true. It's true. I mean, he definitely like George R. Martin is definitely like making a dick joke there because um Riggs theory howling through a net on Arthur Dane. Yeah, I mean my big joke was that like what he threw a frog at him or something, but the I mean the show did a what the show had what like somebody getting stabbed in the back and then they took him out that way and it was considered not honorable. I guess that seems like that might be the thing that happened at the Tower of Joy. It seems very it seems about right. Thing is, will we actually revisit the Tower of Joy? Like because there's no werewood there, but can Bran warg open air? Does he have any reason to go back to that, or is they just going to meet Howland Reed and Howland Reed will just like um, reveal it or something? You know, um, Varys and Littlefinger were such rivals at the start of Game of Thrones. Why had neither ever tried to kill the other? Why keep the other alive? Uh I mean, you're absolutely right. It's. I think it's Varys in private to Illyrio says that he has no idea what Littlefinger is doing, and I think even in there might be a So Spake Martin where Martin brings them up that Littlefinger and Varys really don't know what each other's plans are, and they just find each other confusing. Um, I mean, you're kind of right that like why especially after the dagger incident, like Varys must have just been really perplexed. Like, what's your game, Littlefinger? Um, but yeah, I mean, it's like we've brought up like the Tyrion plot hole of A Clash of Kings, where Tyrion should really be killing Littlefinger like immediately, and yet he just lets him live. Littlefinger like walks around with this dagger, and it's just Tyrion just lets it happen. It's kind of ridiculous, but yeah, shouldn't Littlefinger and Varys like want to kill each other? Yeah, probably, but um, I don't know if they're just confused by each other's like actions. I guess they're just like, huh, you've got your game, I've got my game. We're not sure what they are, but I know. I don't know why. It seems like it'd be pretty easy. He's got his little like the thing is Varys has these little birds that can kill anybody. He's got these children all over the place who can stab anybody. Why wouldn't he have them stab Littlefinger? I guess he just didn't uh he just couldn't figure it. I don't know. Couldn't figure it out. Um Thoughts on Biden's actions in Iran? Uh, um, like I mean, I can't talk about like stuff in too much detail, with regards to uh, Biden and Iran. Um, Obviously, I think that things are related to um, just trying to ensure like right now Iran seems a little worried and scared that they were going to get blamed for things that Hamas did, and they're also scared that they're getting blamed for things that the Houthis are doing. In a sense, like Iran gives money and then all of a sudden like gets is scared that they're going to get blamed for stuff that they give money to. And so I think I think that was probably the calculation of Biden, that we could get away with this strike, just and to keep Iran scared from joining something, from joining war, and doing more action. I think that's probably the thought process, that right now Iran is timid and scared, and they want to keep Iran timid and scared. But yeah, there are smarter men than me dealing with Iran. I wouldn't know how to handle Iran. I love listening to you talk and theorize about Game of Thrones, the real world, and other pop cultural things. You are fascinating in a very nerdy way. Thank you, thank you. I am pretty nerdy. You're telling me that Robert Kardashian is time traveling Brad? Yes, yes. He planned it all, and then wanted Kanye West to make a hologram of him. Jesus fucking Christ! Isn't that fucking weird? Kanye West made a hologram of O.J. Simpson's lawyer. Okay, that's the fucking weird fucking world we live in, right? Kanye West made a hologram of O.J. Simpson's lawyer. Got any funny stories or mess ups in the State Department, either coworkers or stories you've heard about? Oh, I've got some funny, there's some weird ones. Many years ago, I mean, all this stuff is in like the news, but like many years ago, there was a State Department. It was so in Afghanistan. There are something called dancing boys. So most parties, all parties in Afghanistan among Afghans are gender segregated. So if you have a wedding, the women party in one room and the men party in the other room. And like the bride and groom go back and forth, like thanking everybody, but the women are partying and the men are partying, segregated. That's the way weddings are. And so the thing is, if you want like dancing entertainment, you can't have and it's not like Egypt or Jordan or Lebanon where you can get a belly dancer. Okay. That's not allowed. You can hire a dancing boy. And these are these little boys, usually between the ages of like 8 and 11, 12, who come in and like dance, and do belly dancing stuff and dance. So there's dancing boys at stuff. Anyway, obviously, to a Westerner coming in, the concept of a dancing boy seems really weird and icky and odd and everything. So there was this one guy's going away party, and as a joke, somebody got a big cake and then had like a paper, one of the, it was supposed to be a cake, but it was paper. And then like he had the dancing boy jump out of the cake and start dancing. And it was a big joke. And then somebody handed the dancing boy $1. Anyway, bad taste joke. But the story then became, oh my God, you got a dancing boy? You got a dancing boy? Like, oh God, like, oh, somebody was like getting sexual favors from a dancing boy. People were getting lap dances from a dancing boy. The story like became like bigger, and like investigators got called in, and like a friend of mine, like, went and investigated this whole thing, and like had to interview all these different people about like this dancing boy incident. And, in the end, like, and then the problem is that like the Afghans didn't understand what was wrong. Like all these people were going in asking questions, like talking to the family, finding the family and talking to this dancing boy, like because they wanted to know if like anything, if anybody sexually abused this dancing boy, and everyone is very confused, and everybody's like, the Americans are angry, so maybe we should kill the dancing boy, and everyone's like, no, oh my god, and so then they had to like relocate the family away from the village to a different village. Ah, these things that happen, these crazy things that happen. Um, you see Larry David and Elmo. Thoughts on Curb? I didn't. I saw the headline for the thing on Larry David and Elmo, but I didn't know what exactly happened. But I think Curb is sometimes the funniest thing ever. Sometimes he, you know, he takes a lot of risks, and I mean, I watch Curb. I like it a lot, but he either like hits like hard or he whiffs, you know, and like one of the two happens, you know, where you're just like, oh my god, that's so perfect and so funny, and then another time it's like, nah, I don't really understand that. That's not really, you know, like he had this big, there's this big thing about, like I remember one episode where like he makes this big scene about this guy about not needing to stand in line at a buffet if you're getting seconds and stuff, and like I just don't think enough people really think about that issue. Like they're just not there for enough buffets and lines to think about whether you would have to wait in line a second time, you know, stuff like that. Kind of weird. Um, but I think it's a really funny show. I just, you know, like I say, just sometimes he hits and sometimes he does not. Um, uh, why hasn't the price of blow gone up? I have no idea about the price of blow. Um, usually cartels, right? Don't cartels like regulate these prices? Um, maybe it's getting cheaper to produce. Just keeps going down and down. Uh, we're back on American Preston the American thing. Um, oh, I was being facetious. Income disparity grows every year, is the worst, just like every year is the hottest ever. Oh, I mean, that's true. That's true. That's true. Um, I mean, it does just keep getting worse and worse. Weirdly, Thai food is very popular in the Vale. I wish. Virginia still sucks. Tennessee is the best state in the union. There's the thing I'll grant about like Tennessee and Kentucky. Um, they are stunningly beautiful states nature wise. Like if you pass through Tennessee and Kentucky, like they're just the rolling hills and the rivers. It's just really stunningly beautiful stuff. Um, and when you go to a restaurant, the service is pretty damn great because that person is very thankful they have a job. Oh, now we're on Hillary Swank. Yes, Hillary Swank. Worst photo. Pick the worst photo of her ever, and she's still hot. Yes. Cherry pick your cruddy photos. I mean, Hillary Swank was married to Chad Lowe. And Chad Lowe, you know, when he was young, he just looked like Rob Lowe with blonde hair, you know. And then she got successful, and then she dumped him because, you know, gotta move up in the world, I suppose. This is like that. There's that old Seinfeld about where she's dating a guy who's trying to pass the boards or something to become a full-fledged board certified doctor, and then he passes them, and then he immediately dumps her. She's only sticking with him so she can be with this doctor, and and then he um, and then he passes the board. He's like, one of the big things about being a full fledged doctor is you get to dump who you're with and then get somebody better. Um, Hi to you. Is the leftovers supernatural at all? Um, it's really hard to explain season 2 without some supernatural elements. I mean, obviously, besides everybody vanishing, you know, the people vanishing aside, um, season 2 gets really weird. Like, they never do explain why that town didn't have anybody disappear. They never like that the earthquake when he like jumps in the water and then the earthquake like opens up the ground to drain out the water so he doesn't drown is so improbable that you're just like, what? And then he has some weird spacey dreams of the future as well with the hotel and stuff. And then they walk it back. Like third season kind of walks back from the supernatural, um, which I'm happy for. I think season 2 went off the rails with regards to like the supernatural elements. But I can't, I can't really explain. Like, I guess it'd just be like you could say massive coincidences, but it's like over the top massive coincidences that no one in what was the name of the town in Leftovers season 2? Miracle, was that the name? Miracle, Texas. Yeah, like their population is like it's low population, but still like the probability of nobody in that town getting leftovered is just it's so incredibly astronomical that and the earthquake thing is just ridiculous. So I don't know. It's got to be at least season 2 is supernatural. Seasons 1 and 3 no. Um let's see here. Huh. Did Liana birth a shadow baby at the Tower of Joy? If she did, it didn't last very long. Why does the faith hate polygamy more than incest? Hmm. So I never thought, like going through the history of like when the faith makes a stink about something and when they're okay with something, I always found made no sense. Which led to the Dragon X gene theory. Like the faith is upset with Magor marrying his niece. And there's no reason for that. Like Magor marrying his niece, and then she goes and marries her brother, and they're all fine with that. And there's no like real logical explanation for that. Like everybody's against, and so then they're against the polygamy, but then they cave to it, but they don't cave to him marrying his niece, but she can marry her brother, and then Jaehaerys can marry, you know, Alysanne, and they seem to be, okay with that, and then they're ups. But then all of a sudden they're and they don't seem to be, oh gosh, like all the weirdness, like when people name heirs, there's no there's no one making a big deal when say Magor names a female heir, um or anything like that, but then everybody makes a big deal with Rhaenyra later, but not when it was Daemon, and all of it made, and then all of a sudden they hate bastards, and who they're supporting when, and who they make a stink about. I never thought there was any logic to it, which is why like I came up with the Dragon X gene. So in theory, like they try to explain it as just like it was somehow they fought against it with they fought against the polygamy with Magor, and they somehow won that, and they fought this big war. But then they didn't want to go through it again, so they didn't fight the incest, and had their high tower um, uh, doctrine of exceptionalism thing. But of course, like, if they're exceptional, they should have polygamy too, right? You know. So that's my only explanation is really the Dragon X thing, that there's some other, they're just coming up with whatever excuse they want because they think certain people have certain genes and they don't want the dragons. That's the only guess I'm having on it. If you're going to kill a king as a king's guard, at least don't literally stab him in the back. That's kind of true. I mean, Aerys. We think of Aerys as an old man, but he's not. He's only in his 40s. So maybe he was worried that like Aerys could I don't know, fight back or something. I don't know. Seems a bit weird, but yeah, I think when Jaime sat on the, it's funny though to also think that like Jaime's sitting on the throne, because it's such also a uh, brazen action. Like Jaime must have thought that he was just going to get killed or something at this point. That like, got nothing to lose. I'm done. I'm done at this point. I might as well just go up and sit on the throne. You know, brazen as hell, really, considering that you just killed the king. And then kept it all a secret. Like, why? If Cersei's memory of lions in CR parallels Stark wolves, is Euron opening her third eye like Aeron possibly likely, assuming they get married? Yeah, you know, I hadn't really thought of it that way. So clearly, like, somebody is messing with Cersei's head in A Feast for Crows, but very little time. I've not heard the fandom talk about who could be the one messing with her head. You know, like we kind of all talk about it, like, oh well, Bloodraven might be messing with this person, and you know, Marwyn and Aleros are messing with Aemon's head on the ship trip down to Old Town, and maybe Quaithe is messing with Daenerys's head all through a Game of Thrones, and you know, you can make arguments for different people messing with different people's heads. You know, is it Bloodraven? Is it Bran? Is it time traveling Bran? Is Euron messing with Aeron's head? But yeah, few people actually talk about who's messing with Cersei's head and why they're sending her these dreams and why they're making her crazy. I mean, it could be Euron. It could be completely Euron if his whole plan is to marry her and this is his like scheme. That he needs to like, you know, push things in that direction. I mean, obviously, like the easy answer, the cheap answer is time traveling Bran. Time traveling Bran like planned it all, and he's doing everything. What's up with the Black Gate? That's Ultima 7. Ultima 7, the Black Gate. It's a very, 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 very good game. I don't know if you're all familiar. You're all familiar with the play of Ultima 7. You know, talk to people. I think you're fighting the Fellowship and the Guardian. But this is Ultima 7, the Black Gate, and Serpentile. So what's up with the Black Gate? I think that the Black Gate, I believe that the Black Gate is is meant to be a sacrificing station, that it's meant to look like a werewood because followers of the old gods are going to be giving babies into it, and then the babies would end up on the other side of the wall. And then I think that the Night's Watch was complicit in sacrificing to the others, just like they were complicit in sacrificing the others with the Night's King. They're complicit in sacrificing with the others with Craster. I think that we've got a couple data points that the Night's Watch has been complicit in sacrificing babies to the others, and I think that the Black Gate was a place where sacrificing to the others took place, because we know that there's a big mouth on one side, and we know that you just end up on the other side of the wall on the other side. Um, and so, what's the function of having that big, of having that gate, like like that? We never hear about what it looks like on the other side. That's a funny thing, right? It's just like it's just a hole. How do they come out? Does it like does it open up and there's like a thin layer of ice and you push the layer of ice out and then you're out? And then the ice will repair and hide that side of the wall? Or is it another black gate with another mouth? And no one ever talks about it, even though it's like a mouth sitting in the middle of nowhere. No one ever talks about the other side. But it seems like they're just on the other side of the gate. And I mean, somehow Sam knew that he had to like say the words to open through it from the other side. Ugh. Huh. Yeah, what does the other side of the black gate look like? Plus, they went down into the ground. You're deep at the bottom of a well. Then they go through the black gate. How do they even get to the surface? You know, is there like a tunnel? Is there a pit somewhere? Man, never discussed. This was never discussed. Like, is there a long ramp and a pit that kind of goes up from the ground? No. You're just magically on the other side. Um, um, will you explain to me, like I'm five, NATO money, US versus EU? Um, so there aren't any dues for NATO, are there? Oh, I guess there is a common fund. So there is a common fund for NATO, for administrative costs. It's pretty small though. It's 3.7 billion. So I mean, I guess you have some money collectively for NATO, but for the most part, like is NATO is just an alliance of these countries where they fund their own militaries. Um, I mean, I guess you do have some bureaucratic stuff, which I guess this money goes for, but that's about it. I don't know. I mean, that's about. I mean, considering that like collectively the NATO countries spend have like a budget of have military budgets of $1 trillion, but NATO itself only has 3.7 billion. Um, it's a weird thing. There's not much. Not that NATO doesn't exist as an organization, but NATO doesn't exist as much of an organization. Like it is its member states mostly. Um, but yeah, uh, direct indirect contributions. That's about That's about it. Huh. Oh, and I guess there is a guideline that if you're in NATO, you have to spend 2% of your um, GDP on defense, and that's about it. Which 2% is pretty pretty low, but um, that's about it. Mm-mm-mm. I don't think there's anything more to it. I think there wasn't there. I think Trump was claiming something about like people not paying their NATO dues, and everybody was very confused what he was talking about. Um, have you seen the new Godzilla? It's fire. Poor thing. Um, I have heard that it's really good, but I have not seen it. No, 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 no. It's too hard for me to get out to the theaters right now. It's just um I guess the last time I was in the theater, I saw Barbie. I saw Barbie when I was in Taiwan, but that was like a special day because like it was a holiday in America, so my wife had off, but it was not a holiday in Taiwan, so our kids were in daycare. It was those are very rare things. Um, hmm. My great grandmother ran away from home because her father tried to force her into marrying her cousin. Apparently, her side of the family was incredibly inbred. Now we all have autoimmune diseases. Yeah, I mean, don't we all? Luckily, I think, the autoimmune diseases suck for us, but like, I think in like, we're pretty close to curing them. I think in a generation, people won't, all of them will be, whether you're talking about multiple sclerosis or Crohn's disease or psoriasis, all the rheumatoid arthritis, they're all kind of linked to the same thing. And once they find the cure for one, they'll cure them all. Um, Given Theon and Jane keep up the lie, Zombie John might think Jane is Arya. Lost knows Barrick's memory loss seems set up, right? Huh. That like Zombie Jon Snow wouldn't recognize Arya and might think it's huh. Maybe. I mean, that'd be interesting. But Barrick, of course, we see Barrick after he's been resurrected like 6 times. So I don't know like how much, you know, John's gonna be losing it. I mean, maybe he'll be um they have to have some sort of like way out of it. I mean, I could see like the original plan might be to have like Arya come and go before John wakes up, and therefore he never has to deal with it. Like that's an easy one. Um, but it is something kind of weird. Like obviously when Jane arrives, like to him to be like, and it's one of those things like Stannis must know or Stannis must be fooled. Even though like most of the North clearly knows that it's not Arya, but like Stannis is fooled and thinks that like sending Jade Poole to the wall is gonna somehow make Jon Snow happy. Uh, Fave meal, death row meal, go to meal when busy. I mean, I think if on I'd probably get a bunch of sushi or something. Death row, it just give me the most comfort. Um, they actually have a very grim website about last everybody's last meals. It's mostly like steaks, burgers, fried chicken, that kind of thing. Um, it's either like comfort food, like fried chicken or burgers, or it's like steaks. Uh, uh, um, Given the obvious parallels between Jaime and Jon Snow, do you think Jon will lose a limb? Or do you think losing his life personality is close enough? Oh, and Quentin is so alive. Um, everyone talks about how all the characters are losing pieces of themselves, right? Jaime loses a hand, Tyrion loses a nose, um, Theon loses his penis, um, and fingers, various fingers, right? Davos has missing fingers. Um, some people wonder if like Cersei's going to lose a foot because she like stepped on some broken glass or something during her walk of shame. But yeah, like a lot of them seem to like lose pieces of themselves. Um, and specifically with Jaime, you get this sense that there's something religious about it, like cut off the hand that sins kind of idea. But on the other hand, you also have to remember like George R. R. Martin likes people losing limbs. He thinks it's like a creepy thing. He thinks it's like a horrible thing that people that's primal and visceral. Um, so like and shocking. So, at the same time, like all these people might losing limbs might just be like, well, George R. R. Martin's just weird like that. Um, and so I don't know. I don't know if John's gonna lose any limbs or whatever. I mean, theoretically, if he wanted that romance with Danny, you don't want him to be missing too much. He did already burn his hand, stuff like that. Um, but yeah, I mean, God, I just watched that Sideways, not Sideways, Doorways thing that George had, and somebody got their nose bit off in that. I was like, oh gosh, oh George. Um, I think theory should be for events that happen based on clues and predictions for what might happen. What's your favorite theory and prediction? Oh, I see. Um, yeah, I mean, I see what you're saying. I mean, I think my favorite theories are about. I think I do like the Maester conspiracy the most, and I think that like it leads to the most rereading of scenes, um, and especially current kind of stuff. Considering that like we're all on fire and blood now, and like that theory relates to that story. But by thinking about maesters and maester actions, they're all over the map, and so they affect so many locations and things like that. So I think that's a probably my favorite theory is maester conspiracy stuff. Um, because it also like the maester conspiracy stuff also like gets to the heart of the story about like dragons and Targaryens and genetics and things like that. So I do like all that. Um, as for like predictions, my favorite prediction, I don't know. Because like the things that we kind of predict will happen, it's usually stuff either George said or it's stuff that's like so obvious, like you know, I'm trying to think of something that's like more obvious, like um oh, that like Danny will eventually meet Tyrion, like okay. It's kind of, so I don't know if I have any like if I like any of those like predictions that are just neutral like that without some sort of neat little way to try to figure out that it's actually going to happen. Um, so I don't know. I'm trying to think of anything. I can't think of anything. Are all your theories coming true in the fan fiction? No, no, certainly not. I don't think it's possible for them all to. Um, like I don't think we're gonna do R plus L equals D, um, which is an old one. I'm trying to think of some others. I don't think there's necessarily time to talk about like Roos's like Ramsey is not Roos's son, or if it's worth it. I don't know about if there's time to put like Rorg and Biter being faceless men, or be um, I don't know, maybe some hints at stuff. Some there's a lot with regards to like the north of the wall stuff that's just like there's just way too much even to put in. But I think a lot of these things are going to be referenced. It's like even today with like Jaime and like our problems with Jaime today, like I almost feel like that needs to be at least referenced or talked about again now, and how to do that. I don't know, but no, I don't think all of them will be in. I'm trying to think of any that are just like too crazy, too crazy. I don't think like I may probably not Riverlands of the Dragon. Maybe I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. A lot of it I haven't decided on. A lot of it, see if it works or not. Um, but certainly some, certainly, certainly Quentin is alive, and the Maester conspiracy and things like that. Um, Jamie's odd comment was about fate, not Tyrion. It's about the friends. It was about the friends we made along the way. Um, Fate loves him for a kindness he did not do. Like trying to wrap my mind around that. Fate, fate loves him for a kindness he never did. Uh, it's very poetic. I'm trying to think if I can make sense of that. Can you do a kindness to fate for a kindness he never did? I'm about 40 minutes behind. I'm sorry if this was said, but I have a simple solution to the Jimmy conundrum. It makes way more sense if the Taisha twist came to George much later. What's weird about the whole thing is that the Taisha story is in the original Game of Thrones. And so, like, if it's a twist that came later, then, like, that she wasn't actually a sex worker, um, then it's like, it's yeah that George originally planned for that just to be the kind of like it's a brutal story because it turned out it was a sex worker and he thought he had found love, but in truth no one loved him, which is brutal by itself. But then to think that like George hadn't thought of the twist of it being a lie and that she really liked him the whole time. But then if he knew that, why did he screw up the Jaime quote so weirdly? It's so fun. Ugh. I mean, it's almost like I think that like George just he knew something. He had the original tale and he knew he wanted to twist it around some way, but he didn't know exactly in what way he was going to twist it around. And he couldn't come up with anything better than the whole thing is a lie. And that was the best one. That was the best thing he could come up with versus like some other crazy aspect of the story that just never like came to him. Man, this is something to like ask George the next time there's a like what were you thinking with Jaime? I agree with the comment on Curb season 6, 7, and 8 fire. yeah, there's I don't know, there's certain weird ones. Like there's a Curb episode where because he's Jewish, he doesn't know about baptisms, and so he sees a baptism and he panics and he tries to rescue somebody from being drowned, and you're like, everyone knows about baptisms. Like there's no like no one would ever think that someone's being drowned in a baptism, like I forget what season that was. But there's some I've got to look at like Curb episodes. Like there's some funny stuff. I kind of liked the his musical where there was the power chair. Um, the Spite Store. Oh, that's all with that. See, that season with the Spite Store. That's all about. Um, it's so funny because that one came out before uh, uh, COVID, and it's all about the ridiculousness of having um, hand sanitizer everywhere and what a fire hazard it would be. It like doesn't play at all in like a post-COVID world. But that's 10. I guess like season 6, 7, 8. That's probably some good seasons. Um, because after I'd say his house guest, Leon is a pretty good addition to the show. Um, Hillary Swank, Chad Lowe. Are you guys serious about the names? God, this names can't be true. No, these are what? Chad Lowe, man. Chad Lowe. Rob Lowe's brother. Hillary Lowe. Chad Swank. Um, all I'm saying is that incest is worse than polygamy. Incest is worse than polygamy. That is true. But I guess the question of like what destroys feudalism more? Yeah. Yeah. So that's the explanation. Yeah, polygamy means more dragon riders. They're just producing so many kids right and left. Um, a Song of Ice and Fire comp for Trump should be fun. Haha. Um, I'm not sure what the comp stands for there. Um, all right, so let's see. Where are we? Woo, Ultima 7. So many bandage packs. It's true, to like get the whole Ultimate 7, you had to get an add-on and then a second game, Ultimate 7 Part 2, and then add on to that. It was great though. You know, Blackgate is the same thing as Gorn's Way. No, Gorn's Way is supposed to be something different, but yeah, I mean, does the Blackgate connect into Gorn's Way? I don't know. Yeah, I mean, yeah, could Gorn's Way now I'm questioning myself. Could Gorn's Way actually be the Black Gate, the same Black Gate tunnel? I don't know. Would you agree to ghostwrite a Song of Ice and Fire? Isn't that what we're doing? It's what we're doing right now. Go check it out. Got 20 chapters. Um, why did you fly to Africa twice on the Lolita Express with Bill Clinton and Chris Tucker? Is this referring to some sort of like Epstein like plane or whatever? I didn't know Chris Tucker. Um, was Chris Tucker on an Epstein plane? Oh, he was. Oh, I didn't know that. I mean, apparently, like lots of people. I mean, I certainly don't think that like everyone that went on an Epstein plane like participated in um, the Epstein stuff. Like, I don't think. I mean, both Trump and the Clintons were on it. I don't think either group like participated in any of that. But okay. Yes, simple reason the King's Guard at the Tower of Joy is that George R. R. Martin needed Jaime on his own guarding the Ares in the plot. Also, awkward conversation between Ned and Kat, just about John, but that he killed her went relative. Oh yeah. Well, I'm trying to think. Um, do we know? I mean, I imagine because the Wents like go extinct that he had to be closely related to Manessa. But like we don't Manisa, we're not really sure how they're related, but I guess they must be like cousins of some sort. Um, I mean, you'd think that like Hoster Tully would not be marrying someone that's not of important, like someone that's not of importance. So you'd think that there has to be some sort of connection to, you know, so their cousins or something. There's a lot of these random relative stuff that people talk about that's a little weird. Like somebody brought up a couple streams ago how Robert hates Targaryens, and yet his grandmother was a Targaryen, and he should have like remembered like dowager like old lady Targaryen grandma at Storm's End, like hanging out, like or there's a crazy scene that no one ever talks about in in A Storm of Swords where Sam is talking to his friends about Melisandre, and they talk about how Melisandre sacrificed some dude for wind, and that dude was Sam's grandfather. And of course, he doesn't know this, like, but like it's just this like little random thing, like, huh, like his like it's yeah, or like Sam. It is a little weird that like Sam doesn't think about any of the Florence when he's there. Like, oh right, this is my mother's family. Um, when he's at the wall, but eh, everybody's so tightly related, but they don't really think about often how they're tightly related sometimes. Um, and I made it. Um, where's the Mrs. Davis review? Oh. Oh my god. Oh my god. I totally forgot this was like coming out. Oh my god. So Mrs. Davis is was Damon Lindelof's news show. I knew it was coming, and I totally like forgot it existed. It came out, and I totally forgot it. Oh my gosh. Um, fuck. I need to find this now. What are the? Huh. I am probably going to search this out this week. Thank you for like reminding me that this existed. Because so Damon, I'm kind of a fan. I'm a fan of Damon. After the Leftovers and Watchmen, I was like, I was wondering, like, I knew that this show Mrs. Davis was going to come out, and I'd forgotten about it. It just blanked from my mind, and now it came out, and I need to fucking watch it. Jesus. All right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for bringing this up. I'm going to watch this soon. Um, I've been reading Dream Songs too. What's the point of the skin trade? Um, the point it's I mean it's just like a werewolf tale, right? Um it's it's I'm trying to think like what's the point of it. It's just kind of a weird it's George R. Martin. So in the 60s and 70s he did almost exclusively sci-fi, like, and then in the 80s he started doing a little more fantasy horror. And so it was his like try at like a werewolf tale. It's supposed to be just like a creepy werewolf tale of, and I'm forgetting the ending. It was something to do with like that mirror broke or something, and something strange. There's definitely like some creepy like Doran Martell kind of characters in it and stuff that kind of like are trying to control all the events and stuff. But it's been so long now. If I'm trying to think of like, was there any point to it all? Um, I guess I never thought about it in the sense of like Fever Dream is clearly about racism, and like there's a lot of thought put into that book, and like Armageddon Rag is clearly about like music and consciousness and what it mean like what our legacy means and things like that. Um, but I'm trying to remember if there's anything like any grander story to it. Like A Song of Ice and Fire is clearly about like war and regrets and things like that. But I guess I'm trying to think of like, it's just like Beware Power or something. Ugh. I'm trying to think of anything that was any like deeper meaning to the story. And I'm like, and I can't really think of much. I mean, I guess there's a lot about like family and legacy and like who's worthy to pass on the house and stuff like that. But uh, man, I it's one of those stories I didn't actually put very much thought into when I read it. I mean, I think um, one of the reasons I guess I didn't, because like when I was doing the Thousand Worlds book club, I have to say like one of the nice things about it is that I was actually like forced to think about what it meant thematically when I did a summary of everything. And then with the big books, you spend so much time reading it. You're thinking about it a lot because it takes you a long time to get through, you know. So I've spent a lot of time thinking about Dying of the Light and Fever Dream and Armageddon Rag. But with Skin Trade, it's like it's a short story. I never did any videos or anything on it. And so I never really did it. I never really spent the time analyzing it. Ah, well, I don't know. If anybody else has any ideas about like what they think it's Skin Trade as could be about, what's the deeper meaning of uh of Skin Trade, you can tell me. Um okay. All right. Um Carmine, you still around, or you gonna call back in? He likes to sometimes come in where he's like, "Wait, once I get to the end, um, we'll see." Rhaegar cannot order things unless the king okays it. I'm trying to remember like when they were dissing. I don't know. I mean, can he like can't can he give the Kingsguard when you pass off a Kingsguard, don't they get to be able to like order you around? You know, um, if you're in command of something, you can't just like you can't get a new order from the king. So I don't know. People make a lot of arguments about this that like, oh well, if they're following like when these orders come and how they're hearing about these sorts of things. They're all at a tower in the middle of nowhere. They're not getting ravens. Um, did Leftovers TV go past the end of the book plot? Yes. The book plot is only season 1, and then season 2 and 3 are original. Um, and even I know that the book plot deals a lot more with like describing the different religions that came out, while the book they're only really I mean the show only really deals with two. It deals with the obviously the guilty remnant, and it deals with the cult leader who um, that the son joins for a while. But like the fact that like little religions are all over the place, there's much more about the many different religions in the book versus the show. The show just focuses kind of on those two. Um, like the book is more like the book. It very emphasizes that the country has been like taken over almost by these religions, and that they're very big elements. Um, and you don't really get that sense too much in the show. Like the guilty remnant takes the guy's wife, but and so you feel them, but you don't really think about them taking over the country until the third season where he has like this weird dream sequence about it. But that's kind of funny. But yeah, the ending with the mirrors and the skins trade didn't make any sense to me. No, I think I finished it and I put a lot of thought into trying to make sense of that mirror thing, and it didn't make any sense. Um, I think it was just it was one of those situations because, when I went on the big, like A Song of Ice and Fire is sci-fi kick, and it was a lot from reading George and like George being very logical in his sci-fi writing. But I do admit that when he does go into some other stuff in the 80s, it lacks a lot of the same sort of sci-fi logic, and the skin trade is just supernatural shit happens with no explanation, and you just have to accept it, and you're like, oh well, that's different. And so now, and it's like, oh, does that happen in Ice and Fire? I don't know. Thousand Worlds Book Club, yeah, it's been a while. um the Anyway, any last things here before I sign off? Anybody got any big questions? I feel like got to be something as everybody's to bed. Unless my stream just ended and I'm just talking to myself here. But all right. Um, hey, I'm just coming to say I have to watch later. um, you got physio for your finger yet? No, I mean I've been trying to work it out a little bit more. Um, you know, doing like little exercises, but it's just like completely frozen that I couldn't imagine like it it like moving. So I don't know. I don't know what to do there. Oh well. Preston, do you still plan on telling stories to help influence younger people? Maybe we'll see where we'll see where things go. A lot has to do with like how much time I have. Like right now, I'm extremely busy. Um, So I've got like a I'm back working my 40 hour a week government job. So like there's a lot less time I can dedicate to the channel right now. And so but um I don't know how much longer, like if I'll be able to work when we go to the Dominican Republic or something like that. So um yeah, in an old video you say that it'd be cool if Arya Morning Cat resurrected her. Does that mean Barrick's kiss did nothing? Is he still around somewhere? Yeah, that's the idea, is that Barrick's kiss was nothing, and that there was no transfer of essence or any of that kind of stuff. And it could be that, like, yes, that either Barrick died or that Barrick is still leading a band of men. We know from the Feast for Crows appendix that the Brotherhood Without Banners has broken into two factions. Um, but we don't know who's leading the second faction. Is it still Beric Dondarrion, who's actually still alive, or did he pass it off to Greenbeard or Edric Dane or whoever? Like, we don't know. Anguy. We know that they're probably in the neck somewhere, because we hear a story about the Brotherhood Without Banners being in the neck, and then they're one of the people that's part of their band is named Swampy Meg. And so this idea that the other faction of the Brotherhood Without Banners is doing something. We don't know who's leading them. Maybe it's Barrick. Maybe Barrick is still alive. We don't know. Um, my only point on the Kingsguard: Aerys was pretty distrusting of Rhaegar. Plus, Varys didn't have any counsel for letting go of three. Didn't have any counsel for letting go of three Kingsguard. Um, yeah, it's weird. Like, the reconciliation of Aerys and Rhaegar happens very fast. Like, all of a sudden, um, I mean, it's weird that there's this distrust between them. Varys tells Aerys that Rhaegar's trying to usurp you. Rhaegar seems to be actually trying to usurp him. There is a tension. At minimum, the facts that we know is that Varys told Aerys that he was going to try to usurp him. And we know that Rhaegar said to Jaime, I planned on calling a council. And things will be changed after this war. However, there are a bunch of things that Aerys does that seem to be something one does for a son that you love. Like when Rhaegar steals Lyanna, Aerys is like, you know what? Best thing to do, kill Robert. You know? So, he seems to be doing something, for Rhaegar, right? And Rhaegar comes back from the Tower of Joy to fight for his dad. So, like, the two have some sort of, either, alliance, love, reconciliation. So, him allowing him three Kingsguard, I don't necessarily think it's too weird. He's um but again, it's like, yeah, like, at what time did he take these Kingsguard? He seemed to hang out with two of them all the time anyway. It might be that Hightower was the third one to keep an eye on Rhaegar because he didn't trust him, and that he had the other two all the time. Ashara, student of Blood Raven, that's why she jumps from the tower. Maybe. Um, okay, so Rhaegar, the baby making menace. Maybe he has a dozen dragon seeds in the story. That's true. He could. I mean, there is something where Ned thinks about Rhaegar and wonders if he's the type of person to go off and have bastards, and then thinks that he's not. But that's about it. All right, guys. Thank you all for staying with me. I've been on here almost 3 hours, so I will see you guys next week. But you guys have a good one. Oh, I think there'll be a theory video out this week, guys. A theory video out this week. I don't know if it's a little going to be like too boring and technical. It's a lot to do with timelines. It's a lot to do with timelines. Um, but it's a theory video, so we'll see how it goes. So it goes. But anyway, thanks for everybody, and I'll see you guys later. All right, bye.